Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. So I want to respond directly to the title of the panel, which is what responsibility do political leaders have for healing patient Europe? And I think it's an important question, and many of the people around this table have relevant experience, some former politicians or political advisors. Many are familiar with often frustrating work of political advocacy. Well, actually, for Laurence, maybe not so frustrating because she achieved amazing successes, but political advocacy is very frustrating business for many of us, so be it for fighting climate change or inequality or protecting the weak during the pandemic. So political advocacy was that. Well, I want to describe the process because it's new to me, but I have had some iterations, and I think it's important to describe it. First, you try to convince the decision makers that you have a point and that the cause you're advocating is worthy of their attention, at least. And then you try to convince them that it's not only worthy cause, but necessary to avoid social catastrophe. Then somehow they are convinced that they are absolutely cognizant also that their own action is necessary. Their personal political capital ought to be spent and employed to bring about change. So it would follow, the next step would be they would act, right? Well, somehow this last step of advocacy is the trickiest. And I want to think about why and what should change. And ending the preface, COP climate gathering is happening soon. G20 in Rome is coming up. It is all very timely to discuss what is happening tomorrow and the day after. But I propose to take a 50 years view. What will the people 50 years from now say about how political leaders, but also opinion leaders, political advocacy workers say about us? How did we do our job with all the challenges, amazing, frustrating, awesome challenges in front of us? How did we do? I wonder, how will they judge us? What will they say about how have we done? Will they be impressed, as we often are, by incremental bureaucratic steps that are very far from resolving the threats to our societies, as we might sometimes say, a huge step in the history of Brussels, but a very small step in the history of mankind, right? So I wonder, and I am afraid they will judge us fairly and harshly. This is because I am afraid that we are looking at a generation of political leaders who lost Europe, who are on the way to losing Europe. And what do I mean by Europe? Not a continent, but a place of values. Europe as a commitment to ethics, in principle, in idea, and embodied in legislative practice. As a welfare state, as a place of human rights, labor laws, consumer standards, Europe which means doing well by doing good, helping other places directly and by serving as an example of a good society. A place that moved from hard power to the soft power of a peaceful neighborhood of formerly warring states and peoples who have now the highest quality of life available to large masses of citizens, being allowed not only to work, but to rest, to be creative, and be safe in planning the future of our families and next generations. In other words, being allowed to live the life to the fullest potential, as we should. So some of this is what I mean. Europe is still here. It still exists. And I understand why Jeffrey Sachs, in his remarks earlier today, on the whole, did so much appreciate European socioeconomic order, because we still see that Europe. We see it in the GDPR regulations, protecting personal digital privacy. There are still many welfare state protections. We still see it. We see it in some capitalist self-restraint, still more present in Europe than in the rest of the world. Self-restraint in parts of some of the captains of industry. We see it in some of the initiatives, for example, the Council for Inclusive Capitalism, Green Finance Reform Movement, for example, by former governor of BOE, Mark Carney. What we try to do here today is part of this, what I mean as Europe. It's still here, but it is endangered species, I think. So political choice is clear, but current path is wrong. It is not enough. Right now, we are choosing by both our action and inaction the current path. What is it? Our leaders are allowing the strong to dominate the poor. They are allowing the logic of capital accumulation, the rule of faceless, soulless financial greed, corrupting our republics, trying to turn them into oligarchies. The interest of capital keep winning at every turn, and even manage to use crises to further strengthen itself and restructure socio-economic and political order for own benefit. This is why what happened during the pandemic shouldn't be so surprising. This is also what happened during the global financial crisis over a decade ago. And this is what we should and ought to fear for the future, that the future climate crisis and other crises could be misused as well. So not only austerity is a danger, it is one of the dangers, but the crisis restructuring is also a danger because it might mean that higher debt levels and higher government spending could be benefiting only the interest of private capital, not the public good. So inequalities are high. Unemployment in many European countries is still high. Many in the younger generation feel like they will never achieve the prospects of the rising standard of living that their parents' generation had confidence in. So this is not only unethical, it is dangerous, it creates instability, it creates for unraveling, it makes Europe lose globally. So why are we taking this path? There's one part of the answer, very easy. The interest of the global oligopolistic corporations are very strong. This is a political fight against greed of private interest, and it needs a political Rooseveltian solution. I am invoking here the Franklin Delano Roosevelt, but also pre-war French government of Léon Blum, post-war European reformist governments. We need social reform and political rebalancing in favor of the people. But it is not only because the fight is hard, it is also because the excuses are easy, excuses not to take action. Political leaders, rather than feel encouraged by the scope of the challenge, feel excused by it. They feel coronavirus pandemic and the climate change are a force majeure events. Such impersonal force majeure events can be excuses for sacrifices of societies, be it with COVID or economic restructuring or otherwise. But as we know, things do not just happen. It is all a matter of choice. Appearance of natural course of events does not absolve political leaders from the responsibility or the burden of protecting the people and securing the future for next generations. So there is another choice, however. We can and we must use this opportunity to embrace values which we all want in Europe and which we want to see around the world. Instead of catastrophe management that Pier Paolo Donati alluded to yesterday, we have to choose a catastrophe avoidance. We can, we may, we must choose ethics, values, and the rights of every human being to live the life to the fullest potential. To do that, political leaders need to take political responsibility. And what does it mean in concrete terms? What needs to be done right now by G20, EU member states, especially the leading ones, new German government, the French presidency of the EU that begins in January 2022, they need to take the lead. And getting rid of COVID should be the expressed goal of the European Union. First, agreeing to adopting a COVID nation strategy continent-wide. Second, supplementary temporary income EU-wide to get populations on board with not sticks, but carrots. Third, implement elimination strategies as proposed here by experts. Fourth, help the rest of the world To follow this example, create intergovernmental panel COVID, as Mateusz proposed yesterday, win political legitimacy, both from inside Europe and outside, show effectiveness in COVID crisis to deal with the next crises, also the climate crisis. And I want to finally address political leaders. Please do not avoid the gaze of the future generations who will judge us in the future. The world needs Europe to be a point of reference, of values. Do not be the generation that loses Europe. Be the leaders who renew Europe and help the world. Thank you.
Thank you.